Hey guys, good morning. Hopefully all this is coming through the way that I would like it to. Working on making sure this new streaming software is set up the way it should be. But we're going to be in Mark chapter 6 today. Super blessed to be able to jump into the scripture with y'all. We've got an awesome section of it for us. We know at this point Jesus has been working with his disciples, and they've been off doing much of the work of the ministry. They've come back excited. Had some personal hits, just hearing the news of John the Baptist. Also, they're hungry, tired. Just a reminder that, doing ministry and life gets exhausting. And Jesus had compassion for them and said, hey, let's go to a deserted place. But as they went to another part of the Sea of Galilee, he noticed, everybody noticed that all these people were flooding to go see Jesus and the disciples. And so there were thousands of people that were coming from all the different cities in the area, and were just kind of following the boat. And you could imagine at some level just the the level of potential frustration as a disciple, sitting there and wondering what is going to happen, what is going on right here. And you're just like, can we just get a little bit of a break? Well, Jesus has a capacity to see the very hearts of people, and that's where we're at today. I'll cover a little bit what we did yesterday, and then we'll jump in. Verse 34 of Mark chapter 6, and Jesus, when he came out, he saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like a sheep, not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. When the day was not far spent, his disciples said to him, came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and already the hour is late. Send them away, that they may go into the surrounding country and villages, and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat." But he answered and said to them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat?" So we get to see that Jesus' sermon went way too long. Right? It was going into late of day. Many of these people could have traveled up to an hour potentially to come see Jesus, maybe even a little bit further. When you go to the Sea of Galilee, it's a big lake. It's massive, and so depending on how far they decided to go to a deserted place, the likelihood is you'd hope that nobody else was traveling in that area when you get there. But at this point in time, a lot of people have come from a long distance, and night is getting near, and Jesus has just been teaching. He's been going and going and going, and they are just still being fed a spiritual food that is so necessary. Now, the disciples are probably the ones that are the most antsy to get these people out of there, because they're hungry as well. I mean, if you notice, they were hungry when they got into the boat. There was no sense that there was a clear path to get their stomachs satisfied, and now Jesus has gone, his sermon has gone well over their expected time limit, and they're looking at their clocks, wondering, hey, when's dinner going to happen? And looking around and knowing that these people have to get home. And so they approach Jesus and say, hey, listen, it's time. It's time to just shut this thing down, and let's send people home so they can get some food and figure it out. And he just looks at him. You can just imagine. He said, well, why don't you get him some food? And the audacity of that statement as a disciple, you'd have been like, what is the deal? There's a supernatural capacity here that the Lord could have worked without question. I mean, he could have made their stomachs not full still. And spiritually, they were being filled in a great way. But he understood the disciples had a very practical need. And he says, you go feed them. And they're just like, how can we possibly do that? We're going to spend, 200 days worth of wages to feed all these people, 5,000 men, plus women and children that happen to be out there today? They're just like, how is that possibly going to work? And I'm going to stop there. We obviously know how the story's going to end, and you'll get to hear that tomorrow and the next day. So, okay, and for us, when we look at our life, sometimes we think that the timeline should be much shorter. Up until the point of potential rescue. We also might think that God should work in this way because it makes the most sense to us. But God has a different time. His timing is absolutely perfect as it relates to the entirety of His kingdom. You know, we oftentimes feel like God can be very slow to show up and meet the needs that we have. But the reality, what happens is that in our own lives, He's working something very unique and special, a measure of patience, a measure of just learning and testing, how we're going to respond, and those sorts of things that encourage and grow our faith. And so, as much as we want it to happen now, He knows that the best path to be able to grow you and perhaps be there for just one more to be transformed by Jesus is going to be later in His absolute perfect time. But then also, we have a perfect way. It's our way. And when the Lord chooses to work in our way, we almost get to play the role of God, and it's such a crazy thing because so oftentimes we can be in a position where we enforce our way. We start to make decisions well out of turn, moving those decisions up, or just making a rash one that just seems to be the right answer. And as a result, we can fall into sin. As a result, we can bypass the timeline that God would have for us, all those sorts of things, and really miss the mark. And so from our perspective, we have to make sure that we don't miss God's perfect time. And so